the addictions that occurred in these people, like, they deserved better than the fall that they experienced. Like, they were young. We were so young. Like, to become addicted to drugs at that age, like, people say it's a choice. It's not a choice. Like, your brain chemistry is forever changed. And then if you stay on an opiate for an extended amount of time, unknowingly becoming physically dependent when you're a teenager, like, it's hopeless. Like, as far as like your battle with addiction, it is hopeless. You will be battling it. You don't become physically dependent on an opiate to the extent that like an adult, real life, active addiction. Like, you're not developing coping skills or parenting skills or communication skills or a work ethic or the ability to handle finances, the ability to complete tasks and milestones and goals. Like, you are literally becoming an addict, and it's just a simple pain pill and you don't realize it. Like, we all deserve better than all these things, but it is what it is, and so I would have to really rationalize these things and like get on a level with a teenage girl about her father who is in the streets, addicted to heroin, like, and I had to talk to her from a place of being the enemy. Like, she looks at me as like the nurturing enemy. That's a real thing. The one person that's there every day, the person that is like giving and providing and securing and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the person she's least interested in hearing from is me. But I'm the only one that can speak to her on this level. I'm the only one that can play on both sides of this really ugly coin, where I'm explaining to this 13, 14, 15-year-old child the facts of life in a way and in her own language, in a language that helps her understand it. And I'm not even just saying verbally. Like, I remember one time, like, just being at my wit's end. And I was like, okay. And I like drew a box, like boxes on the sidewalk. And I had her pick up rocks and like say a thing about your dad that you feel, that you want. Okay, I want my dad to blah, blah, blah. And I would be like, what box does that go in? Is that ideal father, or is that actual who your dad is? Like, real dad, ideal dad. And she'd have to put it in the right box. And at the end of it, we did the exact same thing with her. Okay, here's your boxes. Like, here's ideal you and here's real you. Ideal you for me has blah, blah, blah. What box does it go in? So I'd put it in the ideal box. And at the end of it, I'm like, is this fair? Like, trying to give her a visual representation of, these expectations that she's not managing. Like, I am not standing in a place of, like, when I say I've been dealing with this for so many years, I really have. I really, really have. I really have. Her paternal aunt and I have, like, we definitely have been through it, and we've sacrificed so much trying to just like shelter her, trying to give her all the same things that all the people that have argued with me about my tactics or my opinions. Like, I have battled this and protected her and been hurt and rejected, and I have been at a loss and trying to figure out how to overcome certain things, and I have spent all of my money. Like, I didn't have help from the state. Y'all talk about rehoming. Basically, my child was a rehome situation, because once the Department of Children and Family Services was involved initially, from the initial call, like the initial removal and placement with her dad and myself getting involved, like, once that happened, they came in and they did a couple of home like assessments or whatever, and they were gone. And because I wouldn't actively, or I couldn't really actively pursue the biological mom for child support because I didn't know where she was. I couldn't get her served with papers. The last residence, she didn't live there anymore, whatever. It just became overwhelming. They didn't want to help. They wanted to pursue the biological mom, and I just let it fall. And so did her dad. Like, we just let it kind of go and let it be what it was. She was on a no contact order. We left it like that. And I just paid cash for medical things, for dental, for her lunch. I paid for everything because we didn't have Medicaid. We didn't have food stamps. We didn't have any of that stuff. I did all of that for years, and so did her aunt. So when I say that, like, I've been through these things. When I like had really been burnt out and I just was so at my wit's end and I couldn't really take it anymore. I was working full time, plus I was taking 5 college classes. I had full entire guardianship of her. We lived at the beach, which was like 45 minutes away from everything else we had to do. I was paying a shitload of money in before care and after care, and like she wanted to go live with her aunt so bad. I mean, it's all she, like literally she just stopped participating. She got extremely difficult in school. Like she would defecate her clothes on purpose, and she would tell me like, if I cause enough chaos, I know I can go live with my aunt. And I just eventually was like, this isn't positive. So she went and lived with her aunt. And during that time, like, I mean, I didn't handle that correctly, I'll say. I took her there, and, her aunt and I weren't communicating very well at the time. It was just really messy. And up until that moment, she had no idea that I wasn't her biological mom. So she's 8 years old, and then she found out through a guidance counselor at school. It was like a whole mess. I mean, I have done it all wrong. Like, I've done it all wrong, and like trying to learn from those mistakes and trying to understand the psychology, trying to understand attachment, trying to understand how to best serve this child with whatever skills I have. I have been to therapy. She has been in therapy. Like, I have done all the things. Okay. So when we look at my opinion about biology, attachment, and what's right and what's wrong, etc., like, understand that whether I'm giving every, like, a play-by-play detailed to the moment of my life in this world, when I say the things like, I've been there, I've done it, in this situation, I have experience for this reason, whatever, like, I have literally been trying to figure out how to best manage this from one extreme. Like, this child does not know that I am not her biological mom. Okay. Like, for 8 years, whatever, to, the better part of 8 years, to literally like advocating for how she should move forward in her relationship with her biological parents, both of them, one of which she hasn't spoken to at all since she's like 18 months old. Like, she hasn't seen her doctor since she was 18 months old. Like, and that's a very difficult situation. For many years, I felt the same feelings about this person who was like so ungrateful, and she was worried about all the wrong things. Like, when she tried in the very beginning, she just wanted to hear, like, my kids say mommy to her. She just didn't want to lose the title mom, and she was really petty, and it was really fucking difficult. Like, I was enraged by it. I didn't understand how she couldn't be more grateful, like, for what I was giving this child. Like, nobody asked me to do this. Like, I have really and truly, like, given up my own life to take care of a kid that you haven't even tried to take care of. And I was devastated at her, like, who she became as a person. Like, I just couldn't believe this used to be my best friend. And I mean, it was very messy, like very, very messy. A lot of emotions, a lot of unrealistic expectations, a lot of hoping she would fail. I was that person. Like, it gets to a point where you're like, I want you to fail. And you somehow rationalize that. Like, you think, if you keep failing and I keep doing the right thing, this will bring us closer, or this will validate my position, or this will make it easier for me to win in court, or like, try it if you want, but you've only failed. So you just keep failing and I'll keep not failing. And then eventually you'll be obsolete. Like, that's not how it works. This isn't a game of strategy. It is illogical. It's emotional. It doesn't make any sense, like, it doesn't make any sense on paper, but it makes all the sense in the world when we talk about biological parents, and when we talk about attachment, and when we talk about the lack of attachment, and what anxious attachment, the seeking of this healing for a primal wound, basically. Like, these children suffer in huge ways, and then they cause suffrage And most of that suffrage is caused by the lack of education, the lies of the system. The whole system is built on lies, okay? Like, attachment is not something that you can not experience when you're supposed to in the developmental process, like as an infant, if you don't attach. So therefore you have the reactive attachment disorder process in play. And then a person comes in at some point, whether it's within the first couple of months or that first year or whatever, even, doesn't matter. Like, if a person comes in and starts trying to bond and attach, all of those efforts are those sacrifices, all of those things are felt, especially by the adoptive parent or the fostering parent or whatever. These are real efforts on their behalf, and these are real attempts to recreate something that the system tells them that they can recreate. They just need to be loved. They just need consistency. They just need longevity, and they need to, know that you're not going to abandon them when the going gets tough. Like, this lie is perpetuated as though you can just kind of put building blocks of secondary attachment on top of the primal wound, really. Like, that isn't true. And this thing that, like, reactive attachment disorder is so rare, also isn't true. And, like, if we really tap into who we are as like humans, we would understand very easily. If you could just take away your politics, take away your religious beliefs, take away your politics in all aspects of your life, right? All of your really rigid, very bipartisan, liberal, conservative, parenting beliefs, or like, this is how I believe adoption to be because of religion. Like, if you just take all that shit and you get rid of it, and you just think simply like, okay, when a human makes a genetic contribution, okay, in conceiving a child with another human, and one of those humans grows a third human in their body, and they literally make a human being in their body. Inside of their body, they make a person, okay? From another person's genetic contribution and theirs, they then build this human in their baby-making factory that is their body. This child is literally built of their genetic components, their DNA. They are made inside of this woman. They feel, hear, and experience everything from her womb. Okay? And then when they come out, they expect this person that made them, the voice that they've heard, the all of these like hormonal things that they've experienced inside of her, from her, with her, whatever. When this baby comes out into the world, and those people that contributed genetically and made this baby in their body are not protecting, they're not bonding, they're not attaching, this wound is major. It's major. It's major. It's way bigger than anything we are giving any attention to. The system tells us that we can fix it. We can't just fix it. It's not that easy. When a child is supposed to be attaching to a parent and they don't, it's not like, any caregiver will do. Bullshit. Bullshit. This baby's been waiting 9 months to meet you. You pop the baby out, and then this adoptive family is standing at the door, and they rush in, and they take the baby, and they do skin to skin. Like, that's a joke. That's a joke. That's not real. And I'm so sorry that offends people, that they don't want to hear that. But, like, literally, how can we not give consideration to the facts? And the facts are, my genetic contribution and this other person's genetic contribution and my actual body parts, my organs, created and built another human being inside of my body, in my body. If you don't bond with that baby when it comes into the world, and you think as a whole nother party, like you're a whole third party to this event, that you can somehow just like slide in there with your totally different sounds and the incorrect smells and like the lack of oxytocin and all of these things, like that you can just fix it and make it into the same kind of relationship. It's just not true. It's not true. And the only person that I've experienced that can really make any changes, or it's not that they can fix it, but they can definitely change the trauma, is the biological mom. And like, people get so mad at me for saying that. People in the system literally say, like in social services, literally say things. And this is actually what I wanted to talk about and totally got on a rampage, but whatever. I asked a question to somebody in a group that's like trying to foster to adopt that turned out to be a social worker herself. I asked a question about a local city and what their requirements were for education and training. What do they do? You know, what do they require before they, finalize a placement in a foster to adopt situation? And basically she said there are some services, they do have X amount of training, but you know, as a social worker myself, which is the moment I discovered she's a social worker, as a social worker myself, I can tell you that it's a tricky balance, because it definitely, the more education and training there are, the less people we have wanting to adopt. And as you know, that can be devastating. Wait, what? So there's your proof, like right there. Everything I've been saying that people argue with me about, I say all the time. The intentions are clear. People lie to keep the cycle of placements rotating quickly. We have a lot of children. We need to place them as soon as possible. We need to get them into homes at whatever cost. So we say that RAD is rare. It's not rare. It's not rare at all, actually. It's actually super common. It's almost probably more common that reactive attachment disorder is something that a child that's being especially adopted from a foster situation, because foster care is not meant to be permanent. Reunification is the goal. And if that doesn't happen and this child gets placed with a family permanently, like their fucking birth certificate changes from you were born to this human who really birthed you to this person you've been placed with is now going to read as your birth parent. They're not the birth parent. Their identity is completely hijacked. And I understand that the United States of America really loves to protect adoptive families. This is why I say I'm on a completely polar different, like where I stood like 12 years ago, 10 years ago, and where I stand today, polar opposites. What I believe and what I feel today after all of these years is totally different. I believed that that was the right way to go for children 10, 12 years ago. Where I stand right now, I'm fucking appalled that we hide the real, genuine, true identities of children that were meant to reunify, and we made it very difficult. We didn't have the resources, whatever it may be. I'm not going to get off on those tangents because that's a whole different topic that I really am passionate about. But the parents didn't make their deadline. They didn't do what they were supposed to do, whatever it is. So reunification didn't happen. And now these foster parents who have been rooting for the parents a lot of time, they've been rooting for the parent to fail, making it difficult for the parent to win at every possible juncture. Like they definitely are not hoping that the biological parents reunify after it's been 3 years or whatever it may be. So they win, right? Like the parent fails, they're going to close the case. They need to go ahead and terminate rights, and they adopt these foster to adopt children. They permanently place them with this family, with this couple, with this whatever. So now this child, however old, has a birth certificate that says they are of these other parents, and they're not. And we're pretending that this is something that these children should be so grateful for. Like, they should be so grateful that you've made this wonderful sacrifice to, like, rescue them from the like, being an orphan or being, like, a ward of the state. You know, these terms that get used all the time. Do you want to go to foster care? Like, you have no idea. Well, no, like, I do want to go back to foster care. Because at least in foster care, I had the right or the option or the possibility of being reunified with my biological family. Now that I'm in a permanent placement with this beautiful house and these beautiful sacrifices and this wonderful education and all this financial opportunity or whatever it is that you're offering me, like, now that closes the door, and a relinquishment, a termination of rights. It's a whole another trauma. Like, it's really, really devastating. And whether that child is 3 years old or 13 years old, it doesn't matter. Like, the limbic system knows, the child knows And that's why there's always, not always, but many times there's a very strong combative essence in the child. They don't want to integrate. They're not, or they do want to integrate because they want to make you happy, and they want all the feelings that are like instigating this fight or flight response, and they're like always in survival mode. Like they want to relax and they want to feel like they're part of this, and they want to let their guard down, but they can't. And it's just like a lot on a fucking kid. It's a lot on a fucking kid when all a kid wants is that person that made them inside their body to like show up for them. So 65,000 other people could show up and like take a number and like bow down at the feet of a child, and offer them everything under the fucking sun. And their homeless, drug addicted parent on the other side of the road could just simply throw up a hand and say like, hey buddy, I'm over here. That child will 95% of the time choose their fucking biological parent. And like, people want me to say something that isn't true. They want me to say something about this that isn't fact, and I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't know. Like, use your real, true intellect. Like dig really deep and think about these statements. Like, what makes you believe that, like, rushing through a fucking template, guidelined expectation of a case plan for a parent, and them not being able to obviously meet these expectations when they're at their bottom, like that, going through that, them failing, and then you stepping up as an outsider is like the best possible choice in allocation of resources for a child. It's silly to me. It's silly to me at this point in my life and where I sit after all of these experiences I've had. By the way, my child with her biological father, doing better than ever. Sadly for me, right? Like, I mean, I couldn't make, he's sober 1 year and gets her, and like, she's, you know, really trying and doing all these things, whatever. And even when she complains about certain things that are happening, she's like, literally will go out of her way to like backpedal, because no matter how tough it's been or how pissed off I get about something that I feel, you know, isn't right or whatever, she wants to make sure that nobody's going to take her from her dad, because she'd rather deal with whatever the hell's going on over there than be taken away again. Like, this is her peace. This is what she's wanted. And like, now it's on him to give her a more full version of a father, and like to bond with her and to hear her, and they have to work that out together. And it's hard from the outside to watch, because I have all those same feelings that everybody else that listens to this podcast has. I feel like, oh, and after all these years, and who are you to say, and who are you to make the rules, and like, where were you? And like, don't forget, I know all the things, and like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like an outsider. I feel like it's unfair. I feel like I'm, you know, it was a thankless job and I've been overlooked, but that isn't even fact. Like, that's just my emotional, defensive, pity, poor, pitiful me, petty self getting too caught up on my selfish feelings and what I want and what I feel I should have, instead of being realistic and logical and also happy for the truth of what's unfolding. I sent her there for a reason, because things were out of control. She was doing the actual most. Okay. We moved across the country again to give her the best opportunity at education in a safe neighborhood and this whole different experience. And she totally blew it in all the most horrifying ways. And the only thing I could think is to send her to her dad. So maybe now that he's, you know, on his way, like maybe now he can start to, repair. And that's exactly what's worked for her. Shocking. I'm not speaking from a place of from an outsider that's been looking on to attachment and, caregivership and adoption and fostering. I live this every day of my life. And this isn't me telling anybody else's story. This isn't me talking about how my wife feels or how my kid feels or how her dad feels or whatever. This is me telling you my exact experience and how I ended up where I am. So there it is. That's what this podcast is going to be. It's going to be the most in-depth version of my story so far. So there you go. Hopefully it helps somebody. Hopefully you guys make it through. It's way too long. It's probably extremely unorganized as usual and totally not my objective, but it's what happened. So Reactive Attachments Podcast, at Reactive Attachments on Instagram. On Facebook, you can email me at reactiveattachments@gmail.com. If you want to leave a message for me on Anchor, you can leave a voice message there. If you want to call, if you have like a desire to call or to text, I do have a phone number. I'm going to get that for you now. If you want to give feedback and tell me how much you hate me, that's fine. We also have a YouTube now. So there's that. There's Reactive Attachments on YouTube. I try to put a video version of the podcast up. People have been asking for me to actually like do videos so that my inflection and my mannerisms and whatnot can be seen. And that's something that I am working towards, but it's not convenient for me at this time. So the phone number, if you want to send a text or you ever need a call, you're in an emergency situation, I do have a business number for Reactive Attachments. The number is 719-315-0858. Again, that's 719-315-0858. So you can leave a voicemail, you can send a text, and I will do my best to get back to you, as soon as I can. So check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, at Reactive Attachments. Send me an email, reactiveattachments@gmail.com. Listen to the podcast wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And again, the phone number, if you ever have an emergency or you just want to reach out in a more direct manner, 719-315-0858. All right, guys, thank you. Bye.